Something big is happening right now, and most people don't fully realize how much it could affect their daily lives.
President Trump asked the chairman of the Joint Chiefs why they can't just immediately reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
It's one of the many countries hoping the U.S. can reopen the nearby Strait of Hormuz.
Gas prices, food costs, jobs, global stability, all of it is being influenced by decisions coming out of one place, the United States under Donald Trump. And whether you follow politics or not, this matters to you, because what's happening right now isn't just political drama, it's a chain reaction that's spreading across the entire world. Let's start with the most urgent situation. Right now, tensions between the US and Iran are sitting at a dangerous level. Trump recently signaled that military strikes were being considered, then suddenly paused them, claiming there might be negotiations happening behind the scenes. But Iran has pushed back, saying there are no real talks. That kind of contradiction creates uncertainty, and in global politics, uncertainty is one of the most dangerous things because markets, governments, and militaries don't wait for clarity. They react immediately, and the first place you see that reaction is oil. Iran sits next to one of the most important oil choke points in the world, the Strait of Hormuz. About 20% of global oil flows through that narrow stretch of water. If anything disrupts it, even temporarily, oil prices don't just rise, they spike fast. And when oil prices spike, everything else follows. Shipping becomes more expensive, airlines raise ticket prices, food costs go up because transportation costs increase. That's how a geopolitical conflict turns into higher grocery bills in completely different countries. We've already seen early signs of this. Oil markets have been volatile, with sharp swings based purely on headlines, not actual conflict, just the possibility of it. And that tells you how fragile things are right now. But the Iran situation is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. At the same time, Trump is making aggressive moves on energy policy inside the US. One of the biggest recent decisions was canceling a major offshore wind energy project, with the government agreeing to pay close to $1 billion to shut it down. Instead, the focus is shifting back toward oil and gas expansion. Now, this is where things get interesting. In the short term, increasing fossil fuel production can stabilize domestic energy prices. That's the argument supporters are making. More supply means lower costs, at least within the US, but globally it sends a very different signal. It tells markets that the US is prioritizing traditional energy over renewables. That affects long-term investment decisions worldwide. Countries that were accelerating clean energy transitions may slow down. Investors may redirect money back into oil and gas, and over time that could lock the global economy into a more volatile energy system, one that's heavily influenced by geopolitical conflict. So now you have two forces happening at once: rising geopolitical tension affecting oil supply, and policy decisions reinforcing dependence on that same oil. That combination is what makes this moment so critical. Now let's talk about trade, because this is where the economic impact really starts to spread. Trump has brought back aggressive tariff strategies targeting multiple countries, including major economies like China and key allies in Europe. Tariffs are often presented as a way to protect domestic industries, but in reality, they tend to trigger retaliation, and that's exactly what's happening. When one country raises tariffs, others respond, and suddenly global trade starts slowing down. Here's what that looks like in real life. A company that relies on imported materials now has to pay more, so they raise prices, or they cut costs somewhere else, often jobs. Multiply that across industries and countries, and you start to see the bigger picture. Higher prices, slower growth, and more economic uncertainty. Even countries that are traditionally close allies of the US are reacting. There are increasing warnings about a fragmentation of the global economic system. In simple terms, the world economy is becoming less connected and more divided into competing blocks. That kind of shift doesn't happen overnight, but once it starts, it's hard to reverse. And we're starting to see early signs of it now. But the impact doesn't stop at economics or energy. It also extends into global health and humanitarian systems. One policy getting renewed attention is the expansion of restrictions on international aid funding tied to reproductive health services. This affects non-governmental organizations operating in developing countries. Many of these organizations provide essential healthcare, things like maternal care, disease prevention, and family planning. When funding is restricted, services get reduced, and when services get reduced, the effects can be immediate. Fewer clinics, fewer resources, and fewer people getting the care they need. That creates pressure on local governments and on other countries to step in and fill the gap. But not every country has the resources to do that, so the result is uneven access to healthcare across regions that are already vulnerable. At the same time, time, there are shifts happening in security and international relations. The US is putting more emphasis on regional control, especially in areas like Latin America. There's a stronger focus on security cooperation and cracking down on organized crime. But that approach comes with trade-offs. Increased security involvement can raise concerns about sovereignty and human rights. Some governments welcome the support, others see it as overreach, and that tension adds another layer to an already complex global situation. When you step back and look at everything together, a pattern starts to emerge. The world is becoming more reactive, more sensitive to political decisions, more vulnerable to sudden changes, and less coordinated overall. There are three major shifts happening at the same time. First, rising instability. Conflicts or even the threat of conflict are having a faster and stronger impact on global systems. Second, economic uncertainty. Trade disruptions, energy volatility, and shifting policies are making long-term planning harder for both businesses and governments. And third, a move away from global cooperation. Countries are acting more independently, prioritizing national interests over collective strategies. That leads to a more fragmented world, one where alliances shift more quickly and where global problems become harder to solve. Now here's the part most people don't think about. These changes don't just affect governments or corporations, they affect individuals. Higher fuel costs, more expensive goods, job market instability, even things like travel costs and food availability, it all connects back to these larger decisions. So the real question isn't just what is happening, it's what happens next. If tensions with Iran escalate, energy markets could see major disruptions. If trade conflicts deepen, global growth could slow significantly. If cooperation continues to decline, solving global challenges becomes much more difficult. But there's also another possibility. Moments like this can force change. Countries might accelerate innovation, invest in new energy systems, build new alliances that reshape the global balance. The outcome isn't fixed, but the direction we're heading in right now is clear. We are entering a period of rapid global change, and the decisions being made today are going to shape the world for years to come. Not just politically, not just economically, but in the way everyday life functions across the planet. And whether people realize it or not, those changes have already started. Hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. Share your thoughts below. What do you think Trump's next move will be? Thanks for tuning in to Global Chessboard.